I'm going to start at this point. We haven't got everyone yet that we're expecting, but in honor of those who have arrived on time, I think we will begin. Welcome to everyone. This is South African Chamber of Commerce, and we have got an amazing panel of people who are going to tell us about my story, my life, my business. I'm Sharon Constanson. I'm chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce, and we are enjoying bringing to our members and interested parties a much wider network of people that they're meeting, but equally a much wider opportunity of people that we are sharing with our members than what we've ever been able to do before. So out of lockdown do come some positives, and I really appreciate all of you being with us today and all of those that are joining us on the webinar itself. Those of you who would like to ask questions, you can put them into the Q&A section or into the chat section. We will be monitoring it. This is going live on Facebook Live as well. We will be monitoring the questions that are placed there as well. And Dawn, I will be there alongside watching you, but I'm not going to be using any more space up on your panel. I'll leave it over to you and have a lovely show, and looking forward to sharing the time with you for the next hour. I will now hand over the baton to you.
Thank you, Sharon. You know, when I grew up in Joburg, we watched the big clouds, the massive black clouds come from the Roodepoort side before a storm. And when the skies opened, there was the most amazing power, energy. It was short, it was sharp, it was almost angry, but it was passionate. But most amazingly about a high-felt storm is the thunder and the lightning, which is what I think I miss a lot about living in the UK. And after the rain, I would go out onto the tarred street outside our complex and I'd play in the warm puddles on the street. That is one of the most exciting things about a high-felt storm. So welcome to our version of the high-felt storm here. We don't have the same lightning, but we welcome you all to our lightning talks here with the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm going to welcome our first speaker, Alexandra of Alexandra, Africa, now lives in New Hampshire, in the New Forest in Hampshire. Over the years, Alexandra noticed that there are areas of South Africa that were emerging relatively successfully from the legacy of apartheid, and others just weren't. Inspired by the potential of sustainable tourism, Alexandra used her knowledge, her roots in conservation, and her love for the Limpopo area to make a difference.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. And I'm delighted to be able to tell my story today, my journey of self-discovery. So Dawn, to friends and family of participants, and to the members of this chamber watching today, I was a conservation researcher in Namibia. And having graduated with a zoology degree from Cape Town University, this was an absolute dream job for me. I was a young explorer, full of energy, and nature was my playground. And that lasted for a wonderful, wonderful 6 years for me. Until one day I received a phone call from my father to say that my mother had suddenly and tragically passed away. My world at that time just imploded. And I just felt the need to get away, to fill my head with other stuff. Something that was bigger than the research that I was doing, and something that was bigger than Southern Africa for me at the time where I had grown up. I wanted to travel, to discover the world, to learn and experience new things. Anything, in fact, to take my mind off what had happened. But I was a researcher. I had no money. But what I had from my research was I was a good data analyst and I was a good programmer. And I knew that with these IT skills, I could get a job anywhere in the world. And so with that, I left my conservation research behind, and I left my beloved Southern Africa behind. And I went traveling for 20 years and across 10 countries. And during that traveling, I started off as an IT programmer, became a consultant, and then I got involved in big transformation programs. And I worked my way up from PwC through IBM, through Oracle. But there was a constant over that 20-year period, even though I was traveling so much, there was a constant, and that was as often as I could, every year or every second year, I returned to South Africa. I love the smells, I love the colors, I love the animals, I love the culture, I love the people, big open horizons, expansive blue skies. And I just absolutely loved that. Towards the end of that 20-year period, something very interesting happened. I was working as head of IT for a utility company in Dublin in Ireland. And one evening I went up with my colleagues to the pub, as you do in Dublin, and we were enjoying a glass of wine. And I was telling my colleagues about my upcoming trip to South Africa. And they turned and looked at me and they said, "Take us with you." And I looked back at them and I said, "You're joking. I'm going to get away from you lot." And they said, "No, no, no, take us with you. It's a great opportunity. We'd love to go, never been." So I said, "Okay, come with me. Great, come." And they did. And we had an absolutely wonderful time. And when we returned to Dublin, I said to them, "Okay, guys, tell me, what did you think?" And I knew that they'd been quite moved by the whole experience. But they said to me, "You know, we absolutely loved everything about the trip. But we would not have gone if you hadn't been there to host us." And I thought that was really interesting. And at the same time, I was also noticing with all my trips back to South Africa that some areas in South Africa were emerging out of the legacy of apartheid more successfully than others. And one of those areas that was struggling was Limpopo province, that I absolutely loved and I was so familiar with. And I wondered to myself at the time, how could I bring these two together? How could I bring 20 years of IT experience, having grown up in Southern Africa, and my knowledge of the country and the countries, how could I bring that together to make something meaningful to help? So not long after that, I was so compelled to do something meaningful. I resigned. I decided to return to the UK, from Ireland to the UK, where I had been born. And I decided to open two companies. The first company was an IT consulting company so that I could raise the equity for these African ideas that were emerging. And then after a few months, I opened a second company called Alexandra's Africa, a hosted safari tour operating company. Ladies and gentlemen, that was 10 years ago. I now run Alexandra's Africa full-time. I have a wonderful network of suppliers that I work with across South Africa. I have two amazing business partners that I work with, Sonia Otto, Renelle Sevior, and we are driven by our sustainability focus and our vision to make a difference. And we are making a difference. Feels small now, but we're getting there. So, dear listeners, that is my story, my life, my business, my journey of self-discovery. I thank you all for listening, and back to you, Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Val Harris, her story began in Zimbabwe, and she now finds herself in a military town in Wiltshire. Val lost herself. She was a PA, a mother, a wife, and she didn't know who Val was. And as her weight started creeping up, she lost more confidence. Val needed to take control and find balance. And putting health at the top helped Val turn her life around.
Thank you, Dawn, for that beautiful introduction, and welcome to everybody who's listening. I was 22 and I was a young woman living in Harare with wild curly hair, having a whale of a time and really enjoying my life. And everything was wonderful. I'd won a return ticket to London in a travel agent's breakfast in a lucky draw, which was incredible. And life was just amazing. And then overnight, my life changed. And tragically and very suddenly, I lost my dad. And that was a time of great pain. And obviously it shook me and made me think perhaps going to London wasn't a great idea. And my mum, in all her wisdom, sat me down and told me that I must go. And so I went with my suitcase and £500 in my pocket, and I joined a friend who was living in Wimbledon. And I started this whole new life. I embraced change. And this was a time for me of discovery. I was learning about living in a whole new country. I'd only ever traveled to the beautiful South Africa on family holidays before now. And I was learning all about life and about me. This was really a very special time, living with some girls from Zimbabwe and South Africa in this cute little flat in Wimbledon. And my room was the box room with a curtain for the door and a stretcher for the bed, and it cost me £25 a week. Bargain. And little did I know that change was coming to knock on the door again. I met a hunk on a motorbike. He was also from Zimbabwe. And at that point, I had no intention of staying. I always thought I'd return home. But love knocked on the door, and I answered. And this led to me staying in the UK. And I've led a very, very blessed life here. I've had a rich life. I've made amazing friends. And I've been very happily married, and I have a son who is 22 called Ryan. But in all of this time, somehow I was getting lost. And I had a common thread through my life, even in my teens, of struggling with my weight. We were still living in London. I was working hard. I was a young mum. I'd returned to work when my son was 3 months old, which is tough, but it was a building block to our future. And tragically, change was going to come again for me. And this time, I lost my precious mum. This shook my world yet again. I was only 26, 27 perhaps. Your brain gets a little bit messed up when you're talking live, but around that time in my life. And this led to us making another decision to change. And we decided it was time to leave London and give our little boy a life closer to what we'd grown up having. And it took us to Wiltshire. We'd never really been to Wiltshire other than a couple of trips to Bath, but we knew we loved the area, and that was our decision. And it was a decision and a choice and a change that has blessed us beyond measure. We are so very happy here. But again, I still had this common thread. I was losing myself a little bit. My weight was creeping up. I was working very hard. I loved being a PA. I loved supporting other people in their success. But where was Val? And so one day, I had just had Christmas actually in 2017, and I had family, my brother and my beautiful sister-in-law coming, and it was a really happy time. But I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I was really unhappy with myself. And I'd heard about something, and I'd heard about this new, different program, a gut health program, a weight loss program. And I decided to be brave and to try something really unusual, something I'd never ever heard of. And I signed up to do this program. And so in January 2018, I embraced change again. And by the May of that year, I knew I'd found an answer that not only had changed my life, but I had to share it. And so I actually gave up. Well, initially I was still working, but down the line, I knew that this was going to lead to something great. And I became a weight loss mentor. And the beauty of this is that I get to hold someone's hand, figuratively speaking, through a process while they are embracing change. I get to tell them this is okay on a bad day, and I get to celebrate their wins with them on a great day. And that blesses me more than I could ever say. I receive messages on a daily basis about the changes that people are making and how they feel about themselves again. And I know that because I had that experience myself. And so this journey of self-discovery, it led to me achieving a goal myself because I embraced change, and then wanting to share that change with others. I get to work with a beautiful team of like-minded people, and we all really love what we do. I've always loved what I've done, but now it's actually in me, and it's something I can't see myself ever being willing to give up. And so I guess what I'm hoping that my story gives to you is the courage to embrace change. Because I never set out to change the world, but I've learned that by accepting change and by going with it, even when it hurts, I've changed myself. And in so doing, I've changed my world. I really hope that this gives you something to take away with you today. And I really want to say thank you for this amazing opportunity to talk to such a wonderful group of people and to be in such an amazing group of other panelists. Their stories have inspired me, and I know that they'll inspire you too. So thank you, Dawn. I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you very much, Val. And we've had some lovely comments as well. You clearly got some fans out there. People are loving what your talk. So thank you very much. And you do live in a beautiful part of the world. Up next, we have someone also from the Southwest, and that's Gerard Perold. You know, as a teenager, he and his cousins had Guess the Grape competitions. Yeah, not because they were naughty, but because wine is in his blood. Now, my blood is red too, but there's a reason why he has a very red blood, is because he found his passion here, not only in Somerset, but also in his family tree.
Well, thank you, Dawn, for introducing myself, or introducing me. I will start my story. I am the great-grandson of a truly legend in the wine world, Abraham Isaac Perold. I was born in Cape Town, the winelands of South Africa, with its beautiful mountains, sea air, and beautiful fynbos. That's very unique to South Africa. But it wasn't really there where I really, truly discovered my culture and my heritage. It took me back first to a place full of thunder and lightning that Donna spoke about earlier on. The great green hills and the water and the waterfalls and the wild animals of the Highveld. And from there onwards, I really went to Pretoria, a Jacaranda city as many people know it, where the purple flowers falls on the sidewalks like snowflakes, something you don't really see in South Africa, or in Pretoria at least, is snow. So yes, and Pretoria was also a place where I really grew up through my school years, and where I made my first tackle in rugby and really fell in love with this try-scoring fever I had in me playing the game of rugby that is so important in our country. But not just that, but also through my teenage years, really fell in love in cooking, and that sort of really helped me make me the person I am today. Pinotage, our unique grape variety from South Africa, that is what I really want to talk about. It's a grape variety that my great-grandfather in 1924 developed for us to enjoy. So basically, from 4 little seedlings in his back garden, we have all the Pinotage in the whole wide world. Pinotage today, grown in many countries and as well in the UK, that you wouldn't think. But it's a beautiful block of Pinotage that I will share with you on another day. So Pinotage, my great-grandfather took the 2 plants from Europe back to Cape Town, and he pollinated the 2 plants by brushing the father Pinot Noir with the mother Senso, also called Hermitage in South Africa. And this little combination made Pinotage, the Pinot from Pinot Noir and the Tage from Hermitage. A lovely grape with lots of potential. But Pinotage actually has got its own little story with his lows and his highs, where connoisseurs in the early days thought that the wine was really smelling hot and horrible and had the taste of rusty nails. And for many years, I don't think winemakers truly understood how to work with the grape. And over the last 20, 30, 50 years, 100 years nearly, winemakers really truly find a way to work with the grape in the vineyard, as well as take its potentials in the winery and creating delicious Pinotage wines. But it wasn't only Pinotage that made my great-grandfather a legend in wine. He also introduced South Africa to around 177 different grape varieties. That makes South Africa a real melting pot for delicious, exquisite wines. it was only about, well, it was nearly 100 years after Pinotage was born, but I truly developed my passion for wine and my heritage. Although I have been introduced to wine as a teenager, having a small snifter of wine alongside my Sunday roast, or with my cousins, or on a little wine tasting trip down the winelands. It was for the last 17 years when I came to UK in 2003, and really the whole time in the 17 years, the UK has shaped me into the business person I am today. And that completing the wheel of the grape varieties for me. These grape varieties what my great-grandfather introduced to South Africa, making this beautiful wine now back into Europe. And that is my passion. Promoting South African wines, Pinotage, and all these wonderful grape varieties that my great-grandfather introduced to South Africa, giving the public of Britain a chance to taste. The dedication and the passion that South African winemakers put in making exquisite and award-winning wines. The great story is, a couple of years ago, actually, I went to the London Wine Fair, and Tim Atkins, a big wine writer over here in the UK, many people might know him. He had a table of wines. It was a South African tasting, so it was all South African wine. And he had a table of his best wines from the different areas and the different wineries from South Africa. And his top wine that year was a Pinotage. And that made my heart sing. And that's why I would say South Africa, the country I love, have so much to offer for the world. My love, my passion, my culture. Thank you for listening. Over to you, Dawn.
Well, you know, I love a good wine, and it's even better that you live down the road from me, Gerard. Makes me very, very happy. Next up, we have Lena, and Lena Thompson of Nature's Frequencies UK spent 20 years in IT and felt really anxious, disconnected, and without purpose. She knew that her life was about something a lot bigger, and she now lives in Woking in Surrey and has spent a lot of her time on personal growth and has incredible plans for the future, which involves millions of people.
Hi, Dawn, thanks for the introduction, and welcome everyone. So I would like to take you back to 1989, Soviet Union, because that's the country I was born in. When I was 13, Soviet Union has dissolved, and that meant that we were free to leave the country. So amongst other millions of people, we got on an airplane and we headed off to the Holy Land. I loved Israel from the moment I saw the country. I loved the language and people and the music and the food. And I figured to myself that in order for me to integrate faster and learn the language, I would probably be better off in a boarding school. So as it happens, there was the only one in Navy boarding school not far from my house. And before I knew it, with my little suitcase, I moved in, sharing a dormitory with 3 other girls. And the rules are very simple. No Russian was allowed. I hated the rule at the time, but it was really good because within months, I spoke fluent Hebrew. I loved the school, and I loved waking up at crack of dawn, going running to the beach, getting into the boat and out into the sea, going for a run, doing push-ups with the sand stuck in my teeth, only to get back to our dormitory, scrub the toilet floor before lessons began. But I loved it. I made great friends, and I was super happy. Well, that didn't last. On my 14th birthday, as I woke up, my mom stood there with a very excited face, telling me that this time we're moving again to South Africa. I did not share her excitement. In fact, I was devastated. Israel was my home. I had friends that became family, and I did not want to go. But I had no choice. And even before I had a chance to say goodbye to my friends, we were on an aeroplane again, heading to Africa, Johannesburg. This time integrating was a lot harder. I was the only Russian-speaking kid in a school, and nobody understood me. Luckily, there were some Israeli children, and through them, I learned English relatively fast. But few things really happened, important things. I lost my voice, and I lost my confidence. And I also figured that pleasing others was a lot more important than pleasing myself, because I could fit in better and I could be part of community, part of a group. When I finished school, I followed somebody else's dream again, somebody else's journey, as I began my studies in computer science in UNISA. However, graduating in 2003 with cum laude opened up a lot of opportunities. And one of the opportunities was to come and work in UK at Microsoft on a project for Ministry of Defense. I remember waking up in my hotel room and pinching myself thinking, how lucky am I? But the fear I lived with every single day is that somebody will take one good look at me and tell me I wasn't smart enough and I did not belong. Of course, it didn't happen. And for the next 15 years, I had a really successful career in IT. But as the life went on, that emptiness inside of me got only bigger and bigger. And when the kids were born, my favorite aspect of my job, which was travel, pretty much came to an end. I tried to fill up that void with holidays and constantly moving from one house to another, even moving kids from school to school, buying shoes, buying this and that, but nothing helped. In 2018, with the help of a friend who's actually on this call, and she knows who she is, I went through some personal transformation. And I started listening to books by Dr. Jody Spencer, Neville Goddard, Bob Proctor, and many others. I've implemented meditations into my daily life, and slowly I started rebuilding my confidence and finding my voice. September last year, I started my first business, which is called Driving with Daisy. We provide companionship and transportation services to people who can't get out and about, and it is very rewarding business to have. And just a few months after, I found enough courage to walk away from my six-figure IT job in London. But as my passion has always been health and wellness and mind-body connection, I started my second business later that year, where I work with energy wearable products to achieve optimal health energetically. My life is very different now. I wake up every morning with a sense of purpose and enthusiasm. So as I was thinking this morning how I should wrap up my 5-minute presentation, I decided to meditate. Don't worry, I'm not going to meditate now. I've done it this morning. So it was actually a very simple sentence, 5-word sentence that popped into my head. And the sentence was, the fear lives in your brain or in your head. Yeah, I think it was the fear lives in your head. And that just made so much sense to me. You know, sometimes I think we all need to be reminded that all the fear and self-doubt, anxiety, stress, everything is up here. And once we learn how to get out of the way, how to get out of the head, all of that clutter and noise, everything goes away. And then we become truly free. So I'm going to leave you with that thought for the day. Thank you very much for joining me. And Dawn, over to you.
I share your love with boarding school. It was the best time of my life. Absolutely loved it. I would go back to boarding school tomorrow if someone said I had to go back to another time of my life. And finally, for dessert, I think, because that's what you have at the end of a meal, we have Marianna Marks of M&M Communications. She has faced adversity, but used it as a force for change. And she found the courage to be free by being true to herself. She now lives in Cardiff, and this is Marianna's story.
Hello there, and thank you for this opportunity. So a few months ago, I was at a very important black tie dinner. I'm very privileged in my normal day job to attend at least around about 10 of those a year. And in the last sort of 8 years of working with a very prestigious media organization, I have attended, I calculated around about 50. So on this particular occasion, like I do with most of the events that I work at, I hosted a number of guests. Now, some of the guests I know and some of the guests I don't know. One of the guests that I'd invited arrived halfway through the dinner. My guest that was sitting to my left politely got up and went to go sit across at the other side of the table. And my guest was a bit less than my ideal guest, shall we say. And he asked me, so what is it that you do? So considering he's my guest, I would have thought this is the kind of thing that you would do your homework on. So anyway, so I explained and I said, you know, in my normal day job, I represent manufacturing companies and technology companies in the UK and I help them tell their stories. And I've worked with this organization now for the past 8 years, and this is part of what I do. And as part of my job, I'm here to get more manufacturing and technology companies interested in what I'm doing. And then he asked me about my hobby, which is M's Kitchen. Now, M's Kitchen is something that I started about just over 2 years ago now, kind of as people asked me, can I show my recipes? Because my way of dealing with the stress of my job is to go into my kitchen and bake myself better. And so people always ask me, you know, can you show me your recipe? Can you share your recipe? All that kind of stuff. And considering I work in PR and my job is to actually help people media train and prepare for any kind of awkward situations, it was quite funny for me to have to stand 5 minutes before having to go live and do a live Facebook feed, having the nerves stage right, you know, like you can't believe. And I was really absolutely in two minds as to whether I go ahead with this. And I told myself, do it, don't do it, do it, don't do it. And I thought to myself, suck it up, because you are a professional and you need to do what you said you're going to do. And that actually has transformed my life. So this guy knows this journey, who was my guest, because he was one of the first people to call me about wanting to collaborate with M's Kitchen. So surprise, surprise, finding myself sitting next to him 2 years later, not being particularly complimentary, I thought to myself, well, I can do one or two things. So actually, I made a joke, which I do. And I said, remember the day you sat next to me at this event when I'm famous? And he laughed out loud. He did. He almost fell off his chair laughing. And I thought to myself, do you know what? When I was a runner at school, I used to stand at the standing line and people would stand next to me and they'd do the warm-up and they'd say, I'm going to come in first. You're going to win today. And then I used to do my warm-ups and I used to say, I decide whether I run and win today. And so the thing is, you know, this is Mental Wellbeing Week this week. And what goes on in here is what determines your success in life and in business. So yes, I've faced much adversity in my life. I've moved countries. I've started a business with a newborn baby. I've gone through several bereavements in the time that I've lived in the UK. But I am a runner and I'm a long distance runner. So that means there's no sprinting to success. And the thing is, you know, the funny thing about that is I use that to fuel my story. And I went back and I looked at my business and I looked at my M&M Communications and I looked at the books that I write and I looked at my M's Kitchen. And I said, what is the value that I bring to people's lives? So for M&M Communications, it's easy. I help organizations manage and communicate change. It's invariably when they do buyouts, mergers, all that sort of stuff. And I'm good at it because I've got about 20 years experience doing just that. M's Kitchen is my journey of self, where I fight those thoughts that people place in your head and say, you can't be successful. I promise you, you can be successful. And for me, what I do is how I help people overcome that fear, those niggling thoughts in your head, is I help them to try and do things they've never done, like make your own boerewors, or have a go at making your own biltong, or bake a cake if you've never baked a cake. And the thing is, you know, for me, I get at least a message a week from men to say, you have given me the courage to try things I've never done. And that's what I wanted to do, because I wanted to change the stereotypes about who bakes and who cooks and who braais. Because the reality, these are all roles we have to fulfill in life as we move forward. And so, like I say, so I think it is an incredible journey. It is not full of potholes. Well, it is full of potholes, but you choose whether you take that lightning storm, the thing that makes you stop in your tracks and say, I can do this, and you go ahead. And my journey is, I'm going to start this demonstration kitchen, where my kitchen will be about promoting mental well-being. And so I've turned that negative into a positive, and I really look forward to sitting at the next event with the guy and say, you know what, I did it anyway. So thank you for letting me speak today, and hope to, any questions or whatever, connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or any feedback, of course, always welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Marianna. Thank you. And I have one of Marianna's cookbooks and I love it. So yeah, it's her journey and her story. And as Marianna said, it's about the story. Now, thank you so much to you all for sharing, but we have a couple of questions that are coming through. And Rob Herzog has said he wants to know from each of you, so you'll only have a couple of seconds, is what saying, mantra, or poem inspires you that you can repeat for us to enjoy? So his is, life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved. So who's got one that they can share? I think, so I'll go with mine. So mine is a Nelson Mandela quote. Mine is, it is what we do, not with what we, let me get it right. That would be really useful. With what we have, not what we are given. That's right. It is what we do with what we have, not what we are given, that separates one person from another. And that I live by pretty much every day of my life. Do any of you have anything that you wanted to share about that? Your mantra or your saying?
I've got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's actually by Martin Luther King, and it's a very short poem. If you cannot fly, then run. If you cannot run, then walk. If you cannot walk, then crawl. But just keep on moving.
Oh, love that. That's brilliant.
Me too.
Love it. Really good. Anyone else got something that they want to share about their mantra?
Yes, so the one that I always keep telling myself is, you are limited only by your imagination. And I'm not sure who said that, but when I have these doubts in my mind, I always refer back to that one.
Brilliant.
I'll go.
You've got one? Alexandra, go for it.
This is our mantra, and it's with our safaris, and that is, our safaris are crafted with passion and delivered with care. And that was inspired by one of our guests who traveled with us 2 years ago. And he said to me, he said, you know, there's something quite artisan about what you've put together here, something really crafted. And it was a lovely comment, and it just got us thinking. And that's how we came up with that mantra about our safari experiences.
Just repeat it again. What is it?
Crafted with passion, delivered with care.
I like that.
It captured the whole artisan nature of the safaris, and also the responsible travel side of it, the respectful travel side of it. Crafted with passion, delivered with care.
Really good. Val, have you got one?
I do. And it's actually one that I actually don't know who, I can't remember off the top of my head who said it, but it epitomizes everything I do now, and when I look back, everything I think I've done all my life, and that is, we rise by lifting others. And it really fits in with the putting health at the top way of doing things, that everything we do is towards lifting up somebody else, and by so doing, it lifts us up.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Gerard, do you have one?
Well, for me, it's just, don't worry from where you come from. Don't look back. Look forward and look into the positive future, and work with what you have with others around you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one that I grew up with that lives with me every day. Is sit jou hand voor jou mond. Verskoon my Afrikaans. Sit jou hand voor jou mond, sê die hoender aan die hond, sê die aap aan die skaap as jy gaap.
Good Afrikaans there from you, Dawn.
Dankie vir 'n Engelse girl. See, can't even say that. I've been in the UK way too long. Does anyone else have any questions? Thank you, Rob, for asking. That's brilliant. Roy's in the comments, and he said his simple one is, if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours. Nice and simple and nice and easy, and just makes everybody really happy. So, And Tanya, thank you. Yes, she's also from the Jacaranda city, aren't you? From Pretoria. So any other questions before we say goodbye to our lovely panelists who have who've shared their stories and their journeys with us today? Let's see, are there any that are coming through on Facebook? Let's have a look. Edwin raised his hand. Yes, Edwin, what have we got to say? Where are you? Do you want to type your question into the chat box or ask the question? Okay, yes, the video will be available. It will be on Facebook and we're recording it, so you'll be able to. And thank you, Sharon. You're all very inspiring, and what an emotional journey. I'd like to add to that. I think that, you know, we forget that the story is what makes us. The story is our foundation, and our stories started or spent some time in Southern Africa, one of the most amazing parts of the world. And wherever we live, we will always be Southern Africans. And I think that is something that I think we can all share and carry with us. And Stefan Mulder, I think he's from the east of England. He did ask a question which has now vanished for me. Who is your biggest inspiration? So if anybody would like to add, who's the person that you really go, wow, that person has really moved me? Go ahead, Lena.
I can have a go. For me personally, it was Dr. Joe Dispenza. I mean, it was, you know, he transformed my life. And I think obviously I heard him at the right time in my life to be ready for it. But yeah, he's my inspiration.
Do you want to tell us a bit more about him? Because I don't think everybody knows who he is.
Of course, yeah. So he's a neuroscientist, and he approaches the whole mind-body connection from more of a scientific level. And he inspires millions of people around the world, maybe thousands. Got quite a big community. He's got a lot of meditations that he personally guides himself. And in the community, witnessed some incredible things taking place, spontaneous recovery for children, for adults, you know, from any kind of diseases and illnesses. He's got many books that he's also written.
So what's his name again?
Dr. Joe, J-R-E Dispenza, D-I-P-E-N-Z-A.
Lovely. Great. Who else was your inspirations? Any of you would like to share?
I have to answer that question in a typical way I'd answer any question, vaguely. I'm only joking. I'm very fortunate in my role to get inspiration from incredible people because I work in manufacturing and technology. And so every opportunity that I get to walk around a shop floor and a manufacturing plant and the stuff, and to see how products and services and things are made in the UK, it is incredible. And the thing is, you know, I remember going to an event recently, and there's a guy who made a bionic, almost like, I suppose, like a diving suit. So to allow his body to walk. He was in the forces, and over time his body had deteriorated, and I don't know if he had muscular dystrophy or whatever, and he created this suit that he could put on that allowed him to walk. And when I saw him at the beginning of the night, because I don't always know who the speaker is, I know on their name, but I can't always recognize them in a crowd of 150 to 500 people. And he walked up to the stage, and you really would not have actually given him a second look, to be honest, if you saw him in the street. And he walked up to the stage and he told this story of absolute incredible courage. And the thing is, those are the kind of stories that touches you and stays with you forever. And so I am very, very privileged to be able to hear those stories and to be able to tell those stories in what I do.
Yeah,
so inspiration everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else want to share? And actually, just a quick one. We've got some people have just sent such lovely things in, have said, I'm so pleased I made time for this today. Thank you very much. Some things. It's a great name. Brilliant talk, amazing stories. Thank you, Michelle. And an inspiration and emotional journeys. People have really enjoyed your talks today. Alexandra, who is your inspiration, or who have you found inspiration from?
First thing to say, there isn't one. I think it's very contextual, isn't it? It depends where you are in your life and what you're looking for and which area. But I think for me, whenever somebody asks me to list down who my inspirational figures are, they tend to be women. And because I think sometimes they have a much harder time in achieving great things. And so it's a bigger achievement when it's a female achieving something. And particularly going back, 20, 30, 40 years, one of them has to be Dr. Jane Goodall, the lady who worked with the chimpanzees, an amazing woman. And she says, she went into the jungle as a scientist and she came out as an activist. And I think that's a lovely saying. Another woman who has always, I love her story, and that's got to be Kate Blixen out of Africa. Beautifully acted by Meryl Streep, but I love that whole story of Kate Blixen. She was so brave with what she did, and, an independent woman. And if you'll allow me a third one, my recent top of the pops in terms of females has to be Kate Raworth and her donut economics. Think like a 21st century economist. She has such a clarity of thinking and she's brilliant. And this book she has written on donut economics, particularly for people who are concerned about the environment and the planet and what is happening, it's a must read. Wonderful book.
And if you like donuts.
Whether you like donuts or not, it's a great read.
Pinotage, have you got someone who's inspired you?
Well, similar to Alexandra, I've got a few people during my life. Of course, my great-grandfather is a great inspiration to what I do and what I love doing and my passion. But there is different areas and different people that inspired me from my younger years and my teenage years. My Germany was a good friend of the family, and he really gave me a great inspiration for life and experiences by going out into the Kalahari and doing some research work or missionary work rather in the Kalahari there, and stuff that I picked up in my culture along the line. And for me, a big inspiration is famous rugby players as well, like Saya Kulisi. Is an amazing person, and that's what I sort of said earlier. It doesn't matter from where you come from, what you can achieve and what you need to look at. So
yeah, brilliant. Val, have you got someone?
I do, Dawn, and I will start by saying my mum, absolutely, and inspires and informs me every day, even now, on is this a good idea? Should I do that? She's with me all the time and very blessed with that. And a similar thing where I've had people who inspire me woven through my life. So I was very blessed to work for a man for 11 years called Alan Brunton Reid, who is no longer with us. And when I look back, I realize he mentored me as an amazing, amazing man to work for, and adored his family and lived and breathed his business. And he did that because he loved what he did. And he always used to say, success breeds success. He always said things that now resonate with me now that I'm standing on my own 2 feet in my own business. And then there's a very, very special couple that stepped into my life when I needed somebody to step up. Basically, I was in some dire straits, and they took me in and I lived with them. And when I was in my last year of boarding school, I was in boarding school and ended up living with them, and that's Dani and Lynette Smith. And they are like second parents to me and have always inspired me. They showed me how love is done, how to be in love, and how to have a successful marriage.
Wow, Val, thank you very much. We've got one last question before we go, and this one comes from Michelle Cheen, and she says, what is the best career advice you've ever received? Just one line, just something really impactful that someone said that you went, oh, that's changed my life. Alexandra, looks like you've got something there.
Yeah, that's a great question, because that happened to me in my life, and it was a watershed moment. And I was working for IBM at the time, and the business partner who was running the department I belonged to, and I felt I was a fairly good manager. I was still quite young, fairly good manager. But she said to me, it was one word in an appraisal meeting, feedback meeting, and she said, "Your problem is you don't listen." And it shocked me. That was it. That was my appraisal. And it shocked me. And I read and learned so much after that. I hope my listening has now improved.
Wow, that would really hit you, because we all think, oh, I'm a good listener.
Yeah.
You know, I listen, but do we? Do we really listen? Anyone else got something to share about their best career advice?
2 things, if I can.
Yes, please do.
When after finishing studying at UCT, I went to work for quite a prominent PR consultancy in South Africa. And we were doing this major event, and there was a lot of logistics and all this kind of stuff. And of course, when you work in PR, you're a bit like a swan. You know, you have to look perfectly poised on the outside, and the feet are just pattering like crazy underneath. And my boss, who's now deceased, she actually shares a birthday with my father, which is why I'm going to use both those as my examples. She said to me, "It doesn't matter what else happens around you. Nobody knows that you're paddling like a swan. So put on your best Colgate smile, and just nobody else will know it's chaos." And so that is the thing that's always kept me. So when things go wrong, and they trust me, when you do marketing, it does go wrong. You learn to put this smile on, and nobody can see that you're paddling like a crazy person underneath. And the other thing is for my dad, and my dad's also deceased. My dad was an electronics engineer, and my dad said to me, "Don't worry, my darling, you always have something more to learn." And so for me, it is, my life is a learning journey, really.
Brilliant. That's so good. And coming from your dad as well, it will always be a part of you. I think that's amazing. Anyone else? I just wanted, Hamwick said something really special. He just said, "At the moment, my top 5 inspirational people are the 5 speakers who have inspired me today. Evidence of the value in following a dream." That's actually made me a little bit teary. Oh, that's really lovely. So thank you so much, very, very much for joining us. Wherever you're joining us in the world, it's just been an absolute pleasure. Sharon has said that these panelists have given me great lift of emotional positivity. We've all had wonderful value. You've all had wonderful value to bring to the others. So thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story. You know, it's not easy sometimes to share your story, but it's when you allow your story to become more prominent in who you are, then, you know, business then is just a sideline. You know, it's who you are that people buy from. People want to know about you, and they want to be a part of your journey because you inspire them. So thank you for inspiring us all today, to our 5 panelists, and thank you wherever you're listening around the world. We have absolutely loved spending some time with you, and please do come again. We will let you know when the next one is. So sending lots of love from here to around the world to all our Southern African and South African connections, wherever you are. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.